I teach in Newbridge Integrated College, and I am the head of art there, but I'm also involved in the CRED committee in our school. Newbridge, and we're delighted and privileged to be here and involved in this conversation with Joint Up Thinking, which is wonderful to be part of all of the talk around this subject. So Newbridge Integrated College, we are a thriving college school in Loughbrickland, between Banbridge and Newry, where we have taken the name Newbridge. And we have a wide catchment area from as far as Rostrevor to Dromore, so a large catchment area, and we're still heavily oversubscribed. We're only 24 years old this year, and we pride ourselves on doing very well, and we're really pleased with the networks that we have formed so far because of the work that we've been doing within this area. So we have been as a result of the work that we've done in controversial issues and dealing with controversial issues in the classroom, and our work involved in organising a CRED team within the college community. We have been to London and back, where we learnt about the work that Lisa and David do. We met them there and have had a really solid relationship since, and we're delighted to have that. And as a result of that as well, we have been invited to Brussels and Bratislava to share the work that we have done in the school, and also to share the work of the Integrated College. So we had this slide up to provide a wee bit of background information as to what integrated education provides. And we are very well supported, needless to say, by NICE and the IEF. And in terms of quality assurance that was mentioned before, we like to think of using this as our guidance and our value system. We had done work with the CRED group, which was recognised by the Evans Foundation for Peace Education, and they acknowledged the process in which we had developed in dealing with and learning about hot topics. And they were really interested in our innovative practice for dealing with controversial issues and how we were able to share that with the whole school community. We always, in terms of our own identity, like to share with in the conversation just how our badge is made up. We have the River Ban represented and the yew trees to show where our position in Northern Ireland. And also then the handshaking as a sign of reconciliation, and then the dove of peace. And this was a symbol then that transferred very well when we were talking to other schools and policymakers in Europe. Our project of dealing with controversial issues began when our English department were studying a novel called The Bog Child by Siobhan Dowd. And some of the work that was done in the discussion that came from this investigation caused a little disruption within the school. The story itself was set in 1981 during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and the book explored the hunger strikers and their struggles with the British government. So there were concerns raised from staff and parents. And indeed, our school was plastered on the front page of the local newspapers because of the controversy that came as a result of all of this. There were mixed opinions, and some very sensitive issues then came to the fore. So what we did, and Mrs. Anne Anderson, who you will hear speak later, we have a film of her exploring some of the work that has been done here, decided that we should tackle this head on. And basically what we did was we went back to our mission statement, which we explored then as a wider staff. And as a result of this, we started to look just at what our college aims were and what was our role in the local community. So we were bringing pupils together from all backgrounds. As a school, we had the responsibility then to educate these pupils to become well-rounded citizens. And from that then we explored our college aims. We thought about how we were to promote peace and reconciliation by actively seeking knowledge and understanding of other beliefs and cultures and traditions. And our other key college aim then was to develop in our pupils the self-esteem and self-discipline necessary for responsible citizenship in a pluralistic society. So using that as an impetus, we were then able to collectively decide as a staff, guided by Anne, that we would do something about it. So we were using this conflict and this issue as a learning opportunity, and that's essentially what we did. So the development then was for a need for our whole school focus to develop on a strategy to deal with conversations about controversial issues. And we formed a CRED committee then in the school, the Community Relations, Equality and Diversity team. And at this stage I was already involved in working with CRED through the work I had done through my subject area and some of the training that had been done with Jane Sims and being aware of the statutory regulation of CRED just within the school. So I was keen to make sure that that would be something that we could develop. And to highlight just that the Community Relations, Equality, Diversity team within our school worked collaboratively with teachers to develop whole school methodology to teaching controversial issues. And this work had been highlighted then in a case study by the Northern Ireland Council for Education, SEA. It was this approach that had led us to being awarded the Excellence in Integration Award by NICE and had allowed us to show parents and the wider school community the added value that is offered to our pupils through education at Newbridge. So the award was an endorsement of our exemplary integrated ethos, which is completely infused in our teaching and learning, our management, governance, and most importantly in our relationships. And as a school for all the family, we enjoyed a special relationship with the local community, and we strive to set a positive example of peace and respect for others. So these were our core values really being brought back into focus for us in order to move and create a path forward. So our CRED team involved staff from a number of key areas that gave us a spectrum of the whole learning area, which is something that was picked up in the discussion earlier, where in primary schools it's easy to do this because one teacher is developing all the subject areas, but in the secondary school and the post-primary it is difficult to find the time to manage this. So we formed just a CRED group of really interested parties, and as was said earlier as well, it takes the personalities to get on board and get together and have the conversation going to make something really productive happen. Our CRED audit then was something that we've used, and it was mentioned earlier as well, the ESAGS document. We used it as a focus to create an audit to really see how we were delivering on issues of reconciliation within the school already, and to see then what needed to be addressed to help us to move forward. So we created then the CRED audit, which helped us to highlight just some of the work, some of the good work that we needed acknowledged, and then some of the areas that we needed then to address to be able to work with. And all subject areas were involved in this. As a result of that, we went back then to our core values and our aims as a school, and we looked at the big picture for the Northern Ireland curriculum, which incidentally was a revelation for some of the schools in Europe who were very keen to see how our work had been used within this framework. So it was wonderful to be able to share that with others. But our key area for focus then became the attitudes and dispositions, which tended to be overlooked when we're trying to work towards delivering on subject knowledge. We then went back and looked at the revised curriculum and focused on the statement of values, which underpin each of the curriculum objectives. And this then became a primary focus for us as a CRED group to make sure that it was being delivered across the whole curriculum. So as a result of that then we developed our whole school approach, which was an understanding that there was a need for upskilling all staff and in turn then upskilling the pupils. And as David said earlier, we have to focus on getting the adults on board to be able to communicate that good work then to the young people. The staff training, which was led by ourselves, the CRED committee, involved staffed workshops, scenario training, role play and use of language prompts. And one of our key elements that was picked up on by the Evans Foundation was our use of a CRED key. Now this was actually used in then dealing with the Bog Child work and actively used then with other active learning strategies, which we had been learning then from Sean Pettis and from Sheila Dean and other key figures who had been doing all of this work. But this was something then that was identified by the Evans Foundation and worked on by the school to produce something that was sort of transferable across the board. So really it was about using the active learning strategies, but also giving teachers the language to be able to use that when there was a controversial issue in the classroom, that they could use this then to help diffuse the situation, buy time, and then be able to deal with it. Okay, so just the fact that it came like this as opposed to one A4 page that would get in the file and get lost, it was just a quirky gimmick that allowed it to sort of take hold a little. Can you give us an example? This is very interesting. Absolutely, yes. So first of all, how to respond to a controversial issue, anything at all in the classroom that arises. And there are a number of areas, but in terms of buying time, the idea would be to say, right, okay, let me just think about this for a moment. We'll pause. Where was it? The parking bay. So let's park that for a while, and really we'll come to it after we've built on a bit more knowledge and talked around the subject. We'll come back to that issue. Another way of reframing is to think maybe how could you clarify maybe what you've just said or reframe what you've just said so we can get to the bottom of it. So it's this notion of buying time to be able to allow to clarify what the actual issue is. Diffuses the anger, brings maybe both parties down, and just allows for just an easy strategy that often works. Decade of Centenaries, where again we had a whole school approach. We had asked each of our department areas to buy into some element of this questioning. And with Sheila Dean at the time, we were able to come up with a set of questions that really highlighted the discussion around the topics of Easter Rising and the Battle of the Somme, with very focused and very particular key questions that allowed the discussion to be open and honest. The No Easy Answers board was also a strategy that was used very effectively with this. And this was left in the foyer of the college, and during opportunities to have parents in the local community on board, this was always visible, so it was quite an interactive display for as long as it was there. And obviously in promoting our school, we are open about how we're able to deal with perceived controversial issues. And one of the ways that we used to deal with this was to produce fact files. And this came to the fore really a number of years ago when we had students coming from some of our local schools into sixth form. And some of the Catholic schools, for example, had no experience of the Remembrance Assembly that we offered through our school. So one of the key things that our welcoming committee, which is a student body, which worked in tandem with the CRED committee, was able to do was to actually build a fact file on the remembrance. And this then was shared with the students on a student level, which made it accessible and then just made that aspect of school life a wee bit more approachable. So a number of the fact files then that were produced tallied with controversial issues or perceived controversial issues that might have happened within the school, and it meant then during the decade of centenaries that we were able to preempt maybe some of the questions that would have arisen during that time.
So fact files also go home to parents as well?
Yes.
So they're emailed out to parents so the parents are aware of what's coming up in the school, things that we're talking about, and they're very factual. It's a kind of a combination of departments in the school who would contribute. Our head of history would be very involved as well, and it's to make sure obviously everybody is as informed as they can.
Absolutely, and that was the whole point. That was history was the focus for this area, because when the issues that were arising around the decade of centenaries, when it was brought down to the historical facts of each situation, it meant then that the conversation could be more open. And even just some of the information that went home to parents then alleviated some of the concerns that they had. So the conversation was open.
So that's kind of, I suppose, a bit of an introduction to life at Newbridge and how we deal with controversial issues. And you probably got a wee bit of a closer look, hopefully, at the likes of our keyring through that and some of the questions that our staff are using. And it's kind of funny, we have these in the classrooms. They're on the notice boards in all of the rooms, and the kids are great now because they're so used to it. Somebody asks you a question and you don't have to do that awkward, I don't really know what I'm going to say here, and you just go for your keyring, and the kids all go, right, well, we say, well, we're gonna come back to this tomorrow, or we're gonna talk about it today, or so they're familiar with it. They like the language that's involved, and they also like that opportunity then to discuss whatever it is that's important to them, and also that kind of freedom or flexibility to really, kind of have their own opinion and their views on it, and for those opinions and views to be respected, which is a big thing for us. In terms of impact for us, because like everything, if you invest time in dealing with something, we've got to see what happens as a result. So these are some of the things that we have really, I suppose, noticed as a marked difference during the time now that we've invested in this. So relationships definitely between our teachers and pupils very much strengthened. And I suppose, like a lot of schools, we're coming from a perspective where, yes, our relationships were good to begin with, but there's more openness now between both the staff and the pupils, and a willingness, as I say, to put those, controversial issues on the table. And sometimes with controversial issues, one person thinks it is controversial, the other person doesn't. And again, it's a really good learning experience for both sides on that. My subject's religious studies, and I know over the years I've learned a lot from our pupils and from their personal experiences that they bring to the classroom, and they're so happy to share. Our big, I suppose, staff confidence really improved as part of that training. And Eimear mentioned, our CRED committee as a go-to group, that if you do have something, you've got your keyring, you've got your opportunity to come back to it tomorrow, and then you've got experts that you can go and just maybe sit for 5 minutes and bounce your ideas off so that you're ready for the next day. And I say the kids have got into the swing of waiting for that to happen as well. And the wraparound approach pupils developing these skills of critical literacy and staff reflection, those skills that we're seeing now across all subjects, again, very useful, particularly as we move into kind of GCSE and A-level and all of the requirements for that as well. Our thinking skills and personal capabilities, looking at, again, those multiple perspectives, a huge part to it. And we've really, I suppose, adapted and rolled with that proactive approach to dealing with those controversial issues. Our capacity building at the moment, as you heard Anne talk there about our work now with children in Crossfire and that teaching compassion, which is our next stage of it, and it's getting our pupils into the language of compassion that's there as well. We also have a great alumni and the use of our alumni, which, we're only 24 years old, so it's taken a while to get us to that stage, but, we're there now. We've got pupils who are out in the world and who are making an impact, and it's amazing when you hear their experience, because for a lot of our pupils, they have perhaps gone through an integrated primary school and then they've gone into an integrated secondary school, and it's only when they get out into the world that they realise, for some of them, how different their experience has been. And that's where our alumni have come really to the forefront for us. And also then we have a lot of groups within the school who embrace all the aspects of this. We have a welcoming committee, our anti-bullying ambassadors, and then the Educating the Heart programme, which is teaching that compassion and empathy. So per our parental feedback, again, in terms of our stakeholders, as I say, parents have been involved in this controversial issue right from the beginning. Some of the parents probably responsible for sparking the whole thing in the early days with our issue with, for example, the Bog Child. And we keep up to date with the parents, in terms of sending them our fact files and then wanting, feedback from them. Do they find them valuable? And yes, they do. You'll see there 96.7% either agree or strongly agree that our school actively promotes its integrated ethos, which is what we're about. 92.7% agree that our school respects diversity and welcomes members from all communities. And again, 92% children taught to appreciate people who have different backgrounds to their own. And we're proud of those stats. A wee bit to go, but we're proud of where we are so far.